Hello and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about BC, ballistic coefficients, how it relates to twist rate and how it relates to recoil in certain rifles. So you'll hear people talk about this, and I've even said it myself, where you'll hear the comment said, well, a 7mm bullet or a 6.5mm bullet has better BC than a 30 caliber bullet. And I've said that myself, and I think people know what I mean, and I know what people mean when they say that, but technically that is incorrect. So let's get a couple things clear here when talking about BC. Ballistic coefficients is all about the bullet, not about the cartridge. So 140 grain bullet, let's say it's a Berger VLD match load, in a 260 Remington and a 6.5 by 55 Swede and a 6.5 284 and a 6.5 PRC, 140 grain Berger VLD bullet, and all those calibers and all those cartridges, not caliber, same caliber, and all those cartridges have exactly the same ballistic coefficients, okay? It doesn't matter the cartridge. The ballistic coefficients number comes from the bullet itself, okay? The design of the bullet and the overall shape of the bullet. Generally speaking, your heavier bullets are going to be shaped longer because you can't expand in the width category because that's where your caliber comes from, so you have to expand in the length category, so a heavier bullet just becomes longer and longer. Sometimes the metallurgy used, whether it's copper or whether it's lead with just a copper brass or whatever the case, the different type of metal will also weigh different amounts and have different lengths to them. But basically it's the design of the bullet and the shape of the bullet is where those numbers come from. Now there's factors that are involved in the cartridge when it comes to how quick it's coming out of the muzzle and things like that. But none of that will change its inherent ballistic coefficiency. It's just an algorithm. It's just a number. So it's just a math equation. That's all it is, okay? But it really comes from those two things. You know, the style, the design of the bullet, and the shape of the bullet. For instance, your longer ogive boat tail designs of your very low drag bullets, your VLDs, whether it's your Hornady ELDs, your AccuBond long ranges, your Berger VLDs, those bullets are designed for longer range, and they're going to have a higher BC than an old Winchester PowerPoint or than a Nosler Partition, something that was designed for hunting at short to medium distances. So understanding that, it's got nothing to do with the cartridge, it's about the bullet. We still make that statement that, well, this caliber bullet has a better BC than that caliber bullet. So that's not true either. So technically, any cartridge you get, as long as there's a bullet manufacturer that designs a bullet with high BC, and they make it in a certain way, you can get the same BC in any caliber. Let me give you an example. So the 6.5 Creedmoor is real famous in our modern day, and everyone talks about the high BC of the 6.5 Creedmoor. Like I just explained, it's the bullet, not the case, that makes it have a high BC. But that 140 grain or 143 grain, bullet is going to have a BC of around 618 or 620, something like that, which is a very high BC. Now, I'm not here to go in depth on what that means and where it comes from, but just know that the higher the number, the better it's going to soar, the more aerodynamic it's going to be, the slower it's going to lose its energy and velocity downrange, the better it's going to buck the wind and gravity, okay? At short ranges, BC does not mean anything. Like if you were hunting in the woods and you had a shot no longer than 50 yards, everything I'm talking about here is irrelevant. Just go buy cheap hunting bullets and you're good. But if you're wanting to make longer shots, whether it's at targets or whether it's at animals, ethical shots at animals, you would prefer, it would be ideal to have a higher BC bullet. But that 140 grain 6.5 millimeter or 26 caliber bullet has a BC of around 618 or so. Okay. So I'm going to use, I've got some numbers written down here. I'm going to use Berger VLD match bullets in every one of these bullets that I'm getting ready to name. So it's the same. It's apples and apples. I'm not changing manufacturers or bullet designs. And I want you to see this. So let's start with that 140 grain 26 caliber bullet. The BC is .612. Okay. Now, if you go to 28 caliber, which is your 7 millimeter, the same bullet in 180 grain has a BC of .659. Okay, so the 180 grain 7 millimeter bullet has a better BC than the 140 grain 6.5 millimeter bullet. Once again, same manufacturer, same design. It's a Berger VLD. Now, so could you make the statement, well, 7 millimeter has a higher BC than 6.5? No, I was very specific. I said 180 grain bullet has a BC of 659 compared to 140 grain 6.5 millimeter bullet has a BC of 612. So a lot of times what you'll do is if the weights are exactly the same, so if I shot 140 grain 7 millimeter bullet versus 140 grain 6.5 millimeter bullet, then yeah, the 6.5 millimeter bullet is a much higher BC. Because once again, it's the ratio of the diameter of the bullet and how much it weighs, because the more it weighs, the longer it is. So in a smaller diameter, to get the same amount of weight, you have to lengthen the bullet. And when you have a longer bullet and you have a bullet designed to be aerodynamic, it's going to have a higher BC. So 140 grain bullets across the board are going to be more and more ballistically coefficient the smaller caliber you get. It's just common sense. So if you were to shoot a 140 grain 30 caliber bullet, it'd be the same thing. It would be even less ballistically coefficient, because as you get a bigger and wider caliber, you're just getting a shorter, stubbier bullet. It's not going to soar as well. Not going to buck the wind. It's not going to retain its energy as well. But like I just showed you, with the 180 grain 7 millimeter bullet, you're actually doing better than the 140 grain 6.5. If you were to get a 210 grain 30 caliber bullet, and it's once again Berger VLD, BC of .631. So a 210 grain 30 caliber bullet is better than 140 grain 6.5 bullet on the BC, and a 180 grain 7 millimeter bullet is also better. So every single caliber, there's going to be a sweet spot there where you're finally going to get a long enough bullet that you're going to achieve that same 600 plus BC. However, here's where it comes into play on whether it's practical or on whether you want to absorb the recoil. Okay, so let's just start with the 22 caliber bullet. Berger VLD and 22 caliber, they have a 90 grain bullet. I don't know anyone who's ever shot a 90 grain bullet out of a 22 caliber, but Berger makes one, and it's a BC of .551. So it's not actually as high of a BC, but it's really close. And if you expand that to probably 95 grains, you're probably going to get pretty darn close. The thing is, you're going to have a 1 in 7 twist rate in order to stabilize that long bullet, okay? That's very important. Got to have the right twist rate. So if you have a 220 Swift, you have a 22 250, unless it's customized, there are no factory rifles that I know of that are going to have that particular twist rate, okay? There are some 223s that'll have that twist rate, especially in the ARs. Let's go up to 24 caliber or your 6 millimeter. The heaviest one that Berger makes is 115 grain, okay? That has a BC of 545. Once again, not quite there, not quite to that 600 plus mark, but close. And if you were to extend that to probably 120 grains, you're gonna get pretty close. So what do you got? You got almost the same BC and 115 grain. But you once again have to have a 1 in 7 twist rate in order to stabilize that. So if you have a 243, I don't know any 243s that have ever come in a 1 in 7 twist. Originally it came in a 1 in 10 twist. In our modern day, you know, Savage has a 1 in 9 1/4. A lot of companies have a 1 in 9 1/2 now. Now, if you get a 6mm Creedmoor, it's going to get closer to that. Go to the 25 caliber. 25 caliber is just not known for long range shooting. It's just known for flat trajectories and just a hunting round. So Berger's highest one is still 115 grain, even though you've moved up from 6mm to 6 1/4mm. You still have the same grain bullet, 115 grain. Obviously, since it's the same grain bullet in a bigger diameter, it's going to be a slightly lower BC of 466. On that particular bullet, you're only going to need a 1 in 10 twist, which is what most 257 Weatherbys or 25-06s have. Just as a side note, in my particular Berger's manual, it's a little bit older, but they do have a long range, I forget what it's called, but it's a 135 grain, it's a hybrid target, a long range hybrid target bullet in 25 caliber now that has a BC of 650, okay? So that's pretty cool. It requires a 1 in 8 twist. So that's just a side note. But going back to the rifle, there are no 25-06s that have a 1 in 8 twist unless it's customized. I don't know any 25 caliber guns, period, that are factory that have a 1 in 8 twist. I've never seen one. I don't think they exist, okay? 26 caliber, this is your 6.5. Obviously the 140 grain, we just talked about it, BC of 612. That requires a 1 in 8 twist. There are even heavier bullets than that in that particular caliber. Around the 140 to 145 is generally the sweet spot. 27 caliber, okay. Berger's biggest one in this manual was 150 grain match VLD with a BC of 531. So once again, it's got a good BC, but not quite as high. That particular 150 grain bullet takes at least a 1 in 10 twist. Now, you guys all, I'm sure, know that the 6.8 Western has recently come out, and it's literally the whole point was to have a 270 or a 6.8 millimeter caliber rifle to come out that had a faster twist rate, so it could shoot these heavier bullets. Because your 270s, your 270 short mags, and your 270 Weatherbys have always had a 1 in 10 twist. That 150 grain was the max. There is a 170 grain Berger EOL bullet that has a BC of 662. Requires at least a 1 in 8 1/2, probably 1 in 8 twist. So that's the trend in our modern days, and it's possible in the next 5 to 10 years that 25 caliber that I mentioned and other calibers are going to start getting new new rifles that are going to have those faster twist rates. But as of now, that's the case. We already talked about the 28 caliber. So your 7 mags, your 7mm odd 8, your 284s, you're going to max out at 180. But that 180 has a high BC of 659, but you need at least a 1 in 9 twist. Now, isn't that interesting? All these that I've mentioned before that did have the high BC over 600, you had to have at least a 1 in 8 or a 1 in 7 twist. But now, on this 28 caliber, the 7mm, you actually only need a 1 in 9 twist to get that 180 grain. But you could back that all the way up to 168 grain Berger VLD. It has a BC of 617. So just to make sure you understand that, a 7mm 168 grain Berger VLD has a BC of 617. 140 grain Berger VLD in 6.5mm has a BC of 612. The 6.5 had to have a twist rate of 1 in 8. If you go down to that 168 grain, you only have to have a twist rate, according to that manual that I just looked at, of 1 in 10. So it's much easier with modern day loads that are manufactured to get a high BC number with the 7mm. Okay. Now let's go to the 30 caliber. The 30 caliber on the twist rate is really interesting. So the biggest bullet that Berger makes that's a VLD bullet, they make some other ones, but the biggest VLD bullet is 210 grain. You could shoot that out of your 30-06 or your 300 Win Mag or whatever. 308 probably wouldn't work the best in a 308, but if it was a long action, it would work fine. BC of 631. So a 210 grain bullet has a better, in a 30 caliber, has a better BC than your 6.5 140s or your 168 7mm. BC of 631. Guess what the twist rate you have to have is? Only 1 in 11. That's right. A 210 grain bullet, the Berger VLD, according to the manual, with a 631 BC, 1 in 11 twist. Almost all 30 caliber, 30-06s or 300 Win Mags or whatever that you could just go to the store and buy right now are going to have a twist rate, are going to have a twist rate of 1 in 10. Just some interesting things to note. So when you hear people say that the 6.5 has the best BC, that's an incorrect statement. Any caliber could have identical BC. You just have to keep making that bullet heavier until it reaches the right length, and you can get the same thing. But practically speaking, who's shooting a 90 grain 22 bullet? Okay, very few people shooting a 120 grain 24 caliber bullet. No one that I know of shooting a 120 or 130 grain 25 caliber bullet. But yeah, lots of people are shooting 140 grain 6.5mm bullet. Pretty much everyone that goes and buys a rifle nowadays in a 6.5mm, it's gonna have a 1 in 8 twist. So it's not that it's the best, it's just the most easily available to do that. 27 caliber, once again, until the 6.8 Western came out, I would have said no one, unless they have a custom rifle, is shooting 170 grain bullet with that BC of 662. Nobody. But now that there's a 6.8 Western out, okay, that is true. 30 caliber bullet, absolutely. 180 grain bullets, they're not quite as good on the BC as the 140 or 168 grains in the 6.5 or the 7mm respectively, but pretty close. But then you get up to that 210, it's past. And all you need is a 1 in 11 twist. So if you're looking to shoot high BC bullets easily without having a custom rifle built, or without getting a really expensive rifle that's very niche with a certain twist rate, your best bet is to go 6.5, 7mm, or 30 caliber, just because it seems like the bigger bullets you get, the easier it is to get the higher BC. Okay. Now, one more thing I want to talk about. So if BC is the be all end all in your world, and that's all you're concerned about is the highest ballistic coefficient possible, maybe the application that you're going to be shooting is long range target shooting, maybe it's long range hunting, whatever the case. But if that's your number one factor, there's a lot of other factors. But if the things you're going to be using it for, that's your number one factor, is high BC. And so when you're looking to buy a rifle, or you're looking to manufacture some type of load, and you're basing all your decisions around BC, going to be much easier to go with the heavier stuff, 6.5 and up. But don't forget about recoil. So that's the thing. yeah, you can get the same BC out of every caliber, just get a heavy enough bullet. But how much recoil does that add? So for instance, I already told you that a 30 caliber, 210 grain Berger VLD has a BC of 631. That's better than your 6.5, 140 grain Berger VLD. But what about the recoil? There's a big difference. Big difference. So if you go on the internet to Chuck Hawks, he's got a little table there, and he's put out his findings on recoil. I'm not saying it's 100% correct, but it seems to be pretty close from what I've looked at from other sites or just my own experience. And he lists recoil velocity and recoil energy, because really that's how you have to quantify it. You can't just say it has this much recoil. You have to say recoil energy and recoil velocity. But I'm just gonna add them together and divide by 2 and give an average. So let's just say you had a 260 Remington with a 140 grain Berger VLD bullet. How much recoil would you have? Remember, this is combining energy and velocity together. It'd be a recoil number of 11.3, okay? 11.3. If you took a 30-06 with 180 grain Berger VLD, it would probably have about a 16.5. So you're jumping up from 11.3 to 16.5. That's a dramatic increase. Now, if you shot a 210 grain Berger VLD out of your 30-06, which would have a higher BC than your 260 140 grain, it would be 24.2. Okay, compare 11.3 out of your 260 to 24.2 out of your 30-06 or your 300 Win Mag. So obviously more than double the recoil. So then you think, wait a second, maybe I don't want that, you know? In a 7 mag, let's say you got a 7 Remington mag and you're shooting 175 grain Berger VLD, it's gonna have about 17.1 recoil, okay? That's actually more than the 180 grain 30-06, just by a little bit. Okay, now, if you were to somehow have a 90 grain 22 bullet, how much recoil would that have? I can't tell you specifically because I couldn't find that information, but I did find if you're shooting a 223 with a 70 grain bullet, 4.5. So compare that to 11.3 for the 260, 16, 17 for your 30-06 and your 7 mag, and you get that 210 grain bullet, you're at 24. So from that 223 70 grain bullet to your 30-06 210 grain bullet, you're multiplying by 6 times the recoil, okay? And if it was a 90 grain bullet, just add a little bit to that. What would a 243 with 120 grain bullet be? I can't find that information, but a 100 grain bullet's gonna have about 10.4, about double the amount of recoil of your 223 with 70 grain bullet, but you know, still under your 260 and a lot less than your 30-06 180 or your 7 mag 175, and way less than double your 30 caliber 210. So I know I've rambled off a million numbers to you. I'm sorry about that. But the point is, when you're looking at BC, first of all, understand it's not about the cartridge, it's about the bullet. And understand that any cartridge, any caliber, can have whatever BC you want. But what are you gonna have to do to get it? If it's a 20 caliber, 24 caliber, 25 caliber, you're probably gonna have to get a custom rifle. It's gonna be tough, and you're gonna have to, on them lighter calibers, you really have to have a fast twist rate to stabilize it, okay? Is there negatives to a fast twist rate? It's minimal, but it is there. It will slow your bullet down just a little bit, not much. Probably imperceivable, but it would slow it down a little bit. And if you overstabilize it, it could not be as accurate. It's not gonna keyhole because it's stable, but it's just not going to be as consistent hitting the same spot. I'm not saying that your 1 in 7 twist rate would do that. It might be like a 1 in 5 twist rate, but there is the potential for that to happen, okay? Probably wouldn't. There's the potential for inaccuracy, inconsistency, and it will slow your bullet down slightly. On the 26, 27, 28, and 30 caliber bullets, it's a lot easier, right? Especially now with the 27 caliber rounds coming out like the 6.8 Western. In all 4 of those, you can find a rifle with the right twist rate. And by the way, it don't have to be quite as fast on the twist rate with the heavier bullets in order to stabilize it. Not quite as fast. Still gonna probably be a 1 in 8 or a 1 in 9 in most cases. And that's a pretty good sweet spot there, okay? You get to 30 caliber bullet, you would have to go out of your way to find a rifle that had a slow twist rate that couldn't do it. They all come in a 1 in 10, which is plenty of speed. So you're, like I say, you bought a 30-06 or a 308, it's already good. It's gonna have a good twist rate. You don't have to worry about that, okay? You can probably go as heavy as you wanna go, as long as it'll fit in that magazine, as long as you can chamber it, you're good to go. It's got the twist rate there. But man, the recoil. To get that same BC, shooting that 210 grain 30-06 bullet, 210 grains, it's going to kick a lot. So there is something to be said. Like if I were to say to you that 7mm has the best BC, that's inaccurate. I just explained that. But it is the best balanced, that and the 6.5. When I say balanced, taking into account ease of getting a rifle with the twist rate and not having the extreme recoil. So when thinking about all these things, twist rate, BC, and recoil, combining all that together, that's what you have to decide. How can I get that high BC without spending a ton of money on a custom rifle, just getting a fairly easy setup and not kicking my arm off, okay? That's the balance you got to figure out. And that's the reason why we, myself included, have made the statements like your 6.5 and your 7mm have the best BC bullets. That's why we say that. That's why it's been said. So hopefully this information has helped you to understand BC. And then you just have to think about it. How will this work for you? How will this be applied to the situation that you have? The type of hunting that you do? Type of shooting that you do? Do you care about recoil? Do you plan on having a custom gun anyway? Are you going to hand load? So some of these factors might not even matter, but you have to decide that. But hopefully this information is helpful to you, and it was interesting, I hope. So thank you for listening, and until next time, take care.